Ronnie Deaver is the CEO of Noble Marketing. What a great name. A lawyer exclusive marketing agency that specializes in generating leads and helping lawyers better convert more potential clients into paid retainers with Google My Business, Google Ads, and sales training. In that capacity, he created the first 100% guarantee in the industry, offering to pay back everything, even the advertising budget a client has spent if he can't make it profitable. Wow, never seen that.
Unfortunately, I've never had to actually give anybody their money back because I always make them profitable. Nobody's ever lost money on me. I'm very serious about that.
That's amazing. The offer quadrupled in the client base of Noble Marketing in 3 months, and it's still going strong. Wow, amazing. But today he's not going to just talk about marketing for attorneys. He understands our membership base has lots of professionals. He'll talk about that. So I'm glad that you are all here, and I'm going to let Ronnie take it away. He has a lot to share. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. It's good to meet you guys. Have Merry Christmas to everybody. So my name is Ronnie Deaver. I'm the founder of Noble Marketing. My presentation today is about 45 minutes long. It covers a variety of topics, but long story short, if you're a local service business of any kind, if you are serving a market, say within a 50-mile radius where you provide some sort of service, you're a lawyer, you're a financial expert, you're a real estate person, if you serve people locally in some capacity, or you're even parts of your branches serve people in a local capacity, then what I have to say today is quite relevant to you. All right, so I'm actually just going to share my screen. We'll dive in. We'll go through the whole presentation. I cover what to expect throughout it. And at the very end, I'd be happy to kind of answer any questions, go through that, and talk about it. But to kind of get started, and remind you guys, the presentation here today, to start with, is I like to kind of promise a certain specific outcome, right? And so this number may be small to you if you're on the startup side. You can do way bigger than this if you're at the bigger side. If you're already doing, say, if you're already over $500,000 a year, then you're maybe trying to get to $1 million, $1.5 million. So these kind of numbers, this is kind of like, just another day in the park. But if you're, below startup phase, and I'm saying, hey, this is the number that you can definitely get to pretty easily through using Google My Business, Google Ads, and some of the sales stuff we're going to talk about today. But I don't want that to say for any of you guys that are over that to think that, hey, this isn't going to work for me. Absolutely. I have firms that are doing $1.5 million right now who we're chugging our way to get to like 3 million plus. I have firms right now that are 3 million trying to get to 4.5 million. The way you do it, and the tactics you use just kind of changes a little bit. We're not going to cover that in this presentation, but everything we talk about today is going to apply for any of those business ranges, from the person who's maybe doing $200,000 a year to the firm that's maybe doing $4.5 million a year. So we're going to go ahead and dive in here, guys. First, who am I and why should you listen to me? Well, one, I personally manage over 200 law firm marketing campaigns, and I've generated, counted this once, and it blew my mind, over 500,000 leads and about $100 million in new client revenue over the last 4 years. So I've worked with a lot of lawyer campaigns. I technically have worked with finance experts, real estate experts, stuff like that before, coaches, etc. But where I've really gotten my bread and butter from, and where I really cut my teeth on, is a lot of different lawyer campaigns. So family lawyers, mediators, personal injury lawyers, criminal, immigration, estate planning, you name it. If it exists in legal, I've probably touched it. I've devoted myself to becoming an expert exclusively in marketing legal services and as well as also local services, anybody who serves the local market, but really especially the legal side of things. And then as was being mentioned, I started the only company that I'm aware of this point that has a policy of putting our money where our mouth is, with our 3-month profit and 12-month double or nothing guarantees, which I'll talk about at a later time. You guys aren't here for me to pitch you. You guys are here for me to show you some great useful information. So some assumptions before we dive in. One, you're in some sort of service-based business serving primarily customers in a 50-mile radius. Everything we discuss here can be applied to any service-based business, not just lawyers. So as long as you serve a market within about a 50-mile radius, everything we talk about today is going to be useful. 1, 2, you and your team have some system in place to answer your phone when a new client calls. All right, so that may sound silly, but when you start generating phone calls, there's a certain number we're going to talk about, which is called call to consultation rate. And depending on how your sales cycle works, consultations might not be how you do it. But long story short, one of the biggest places I see people kind of drop the ball is they're not having their phones answered aggressively. If your phones are going to voicemail, if your phones are getting picked up after 45 seconds, if people aren't being called back, if your intake team just kind of answers and says hello, all that's going to make everything we're about to say worthless, right? Like, ball stops there. Like, your phone's either answered well or nothing we talk about today matters, right? So I like to cover that first. Thirdly, here, guys, you need to understand or be open to the idea that sales is a necessary component to grow your business. Now, some of y'all as non-lawyers, right, like that makes sense to you perfectly. But I have a lot of lawyers when they're like, no, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a salesperson. And they get on these consultation calls and they're just giving away free advice and they're just trying to solve the legal case. And then they're just shocked suddenly when nobody pays them. And they're like, why is nobody converting? I gave the best advice ever. And I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't an advice call. That was a sales call. And you didn't enact any sales skill at all, right? And so as much as I can encourage you, be open to sales as a necessary component to business. There's a phrase I like to use, which is you can have a great business that has awesome sales and terrible operations, but you have no business if you have no sales and great operations. Okay. Sales is a necessary component. You cannot avoid it. You must get good at it if you want to reach your goals. If not, use somebody on your team, but there must be a level of excellence in sales to reach any of your financial goals. There's no way around it. Face it. And if you do, you will win. That's the difference between the guys doing 500,000 and the guys doing 4 million, or the guys doing 4 million and the guys doing 10 million or more, is to the degree of which they are great at sales. Number one thing. 4 here, guys. This is just another silly one, but it comes up every now and then. Your clients like you and are willing to leave you a positive review. Nothing I say today, more call volume, even great sales isn't going to change the fact that if people don't like you and like your services and they're not willing to say nice things about you, you kind of have a more fundamental issue that needs to be addressed than marketing. But if people do like you and they do like working with you, then all of this will apply. So this presentation is broken into 4 key parts. And forgive me if I'm going a little fast. By the way, all these slides will be available afterwards. I'm happy to email them to everybody. Feel free to take notes if you want. I had people ask me afterwards, so they kept asking to screenshot. And another time I presented this, I'm like, no. We're going to get through the content, but I'm happy to send you it all to you afterwards, and we'll answer any questions afterwards. But I will email this presentation to you. But first part here, guys, I'm going to show you the data that proves to you how valuable Google is specifically and why I argue for it above all else for service businesses. 2, I'm going to talk to you about how do you actually dominate Google My Business and use it to generate about at least 30 to 50 new client calls every single month. 3, I'm going to talk about the 2 key principles that let you print money and new clients from Google Ads. I know a lot of people have had some pretty negative experience with Google Ads. It's really easy to waste your money on Google Ads, and I'm not going to deny that. But if you know what you're doing, you can actually make a lot of money on the platform, and I'll talk to you exactly how to do that. And 4th, I'm going to end on some key frameworks you must implement and key KPIs you must achieve in your intake and sales operations to scale past the $500,000 a year mark. Like I said, getting past $500,000, it really does start switching from less of a less of a kind of lead flow problem and more of an operational sales operations intake problem. Basically, how good are you at answering the phones? How good are you at converting every call into a consultation, every consultation into a client? Like, how good is your operations? And we're going to talk about how to measure that and how to take advantage of that at the end. And when you combine these 3 things together, get the call volume, have great intake, and do great sales, you'll reach your financial goals, whether that's 500,000, a million, or more. Any of that can be achieved if you understand the numbers you're trying to reach. So, in short, by the end of this presentation, you'll have a precise roadmap to get your firm out of the startup phase if you're in that, or continue growing and blow out of the growth phase if that's where you're at. Sound good? Cool. So this presentation, as I said, is highly geared to Google, right? And there's a reason for that, which is that as a service-based business, it kind of makes intuitive sense. You guys are really in what I like to call a problem-based business. All right, what is a problem-based business? It means in general, somebody either has the problem or they don't. You can go door to door selling a vacuum cleaner to somebody who maybe doesn't need a vacuum, and you might sell a few of them, but the chances that you go door to door and you're going to sell somebody a divorce are pretty darn low, right? Like, people either need you or they don't. There's not much middle ground in your business, right? And that's still, maybe less true for some of you guys doing the financial advising side or the real estate side. Like, you can make a little bit more of an argument, but in a lot of cases for the service-based business world, you either have a problem or you don't. All right, you can't convince somebody they have a root canal when they don't have a root canal if you're a dentist, right? Like, you either have the problem or you don't. And Google is intuitively designed for that, right? So when people have a problem, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google for it. They go on Google and they type in this case, divorce lawyer near me, or real estate advisor near me, or financial advisor, whatever it is, right? They're literally just going to type in very bluntly, I have a problem, I need somebody to fix it, okay? And Google is perfectly designed for that. And so what I discovered, and we're actually going to talk about this, is I tracked about 250 different lawyer campaigns across a wide variety of lawyer type, right? As I mentioned earlier, immigration, family, mediation, estate planning, personal injury, everything, you name it, I've touched it. What I discovered over 250 campaigns was that about 61% of new client leads are attributed directly to Google My Business. And the mind-boggling thing to me was that's not just Google My Business. That's Google My Business without ever going to your website. And so I can actually show you the data. So here I've got about 4,943 leads tracked. If I show you this, this is how many on that next report when I pulled it down strictly to Google My Business direct. 3,118, which is about 61%. If I were to show you what that search looks like here, if I type in divorce lawyer, we'll say, we'll just do near me because I'm in Philly. You guys can see my Google search, right? Somebody just nod their head. Yeah, okay, cool, great. If I do this search right here on your mobile, instead of seeing like a direction button here, you have a click to call button, right? You literally can just click to call. 61% of all of my lawyers' calls are coming strictly from this profile right here. And they just click to call without ever going to the website, never visiting it. Not to say that your website's not necessary, we can talk about that later, but regardless, 61% of people of these call volumes, and I've tracked literally 500,000 leads. I found this to be true across all of them, even in Canada or Mexico. 61% of these leads are coming from people on Google My Business without ever going to the website, just clicking to call straight from this on their phone. Now, that makes intuitive sense when you think about this. How many times have you looked for a restaurant on Google and you booked in a table on Google? You didn't go to their website. I mean, when's the last time you gone to a restaurant's website? You don't even do that now. Right, half the time you can order directly. You say, "Oh, there's their stars. Okay, great, cool. Book a table or order right there." You don't even have to leave Google anymore to go to a restaurant. And non-shockingly, that same thing is happening in service businesses like lawyers or financial advisors, real estate. Anybody who shows up on this map pack, that's exactly how people are interacting with it. Google is designing it such that they are very incentivized to just have people interact on this profile without ever going to the website. And so that's where I discovered 61% of all leads, and I'm tracking everything: calls, form fills, live chats. If you're messaging on Facebook, messaging on LinkedIn, text messaging, I've tracked everything. 61% of the leads were coming strictly from Google My Business directly without ever going to the website. Now that's cool, but then what I also found out was another 11% of new client leads are being attributed to people who contact you through your website. However, those people came from Google My Business. So if you go say on here, La Monica Law, right? And I click website, I can track that. I know that this person came from Google My Business. Now, this isn't my client, but you can see that they do a similar thing. You can see up here, this is a UTM code. This is how they track it. So these guys know very clearly that this website visitor came from Google My Business. I do the same thing. And so when I do that, what I found is that of the people who come to the website and call, another 11% of them can be indirectly attributed to Google My Business, which means they came from Google My Business, and then they went to your website by clicking on the link from Google My Business, and then they called this number or they filled out your form from here. Okay. And so that same kind of numbers I was showing you early, 4,943 leads. This is Google My Business indirect, another 528, giving us roughly 11%. Right. And so when we combine those two numbers together, you get 72% right there. Okay. 72% of leads coming from one source is mind-blowing. And the thing that kills me, and the whole reason I actually started Noble Marketing, was at least one of the reasons, is most lawyers, most service firms don't realize how much volume is actually coming from Google My Business. You know, they might think it's coming from Google, they might think it's coming from their website, they might think it's coming from somewhere, but they haven't put the physical tracking, the hard tracking that I have to see that, wait, no, it's coming from this one profile. And we'll talk about this in a minute when we're talking about how to dominate it. But most people, when they set up their profiles, they barely do it. They're not getting reviews very aggressively. They're not really setting up the profile very much. They're not adding a lot of products. They're not adding a lot of services. They're not putting any work into this. They just set and forget it. But the guys that are coming in here and they're seeing like LaMonica here with 132 reviews, probably puts in a bunch of product services and like puts effort into the profile. This firm right here is easily generating 100 to 150 extra calls a month from just showing up right here. And that's because they put the work into that profile that nobody else is putting. And so a lot of law firms, a lot of service firms don't even realize that Google My Business matters, and they put no effort at all. And they don't realize they're missing a literal gold mine of what could be 72% of their call volume. All right. Now, moving on to that, that's Google My Business, and we'll talk about how to dominate that. That's part 2 of this presentation. Part 3, we're going to briefly talk about Google Ads. So I have tracked this as well for my clients who run Google Ads. When you're doing that, you generally see another 8 to 10% of those leads coming from Google Ads and or local service ads. So local service ads, this is Google Ads right here. These text ads, that's Google Ads. And then these right here, these are local service ads right here. And so these images, right, those are local service ads, and then the actual text ads are Google ads. And we'll talk about which ones I like more and why later. But regardless, suffice to say, these are Google ads, both of them combined. And combined, they do about another 8 to 10%. Now, Vonda Covington is a family lawyer out in Houston, Texas, who I'm giving you as an example. I don't know if you know Vonda Covington, Amber. You're nodding your head. You know Vonda. Yeah, she may have talked about me. Me and Vonda, like the last 12 months, it's been game changer for her. 12 months ago, she was on loans, like barely able to make it through. Like she was in a horrible position. She says that in a video. I'm not saying anything she hasn't said publicly on a testimonial. And it was wild. She was getting 3 to 4 consultations a month, right? And she was maybe getting 10 phone calls a month. And that was when she was just doing SEO, like SEO. We'll talk about why that's dead in a minute. But she did no Google My Business at all, and no Google ads. And she was just dying. I mean, literally, she was dying. She was forgetting about her retirement altogether. She barely got 3 to 4 consultations a month. That's one client a month barely. She was on loans. Now today, I mean, you can see the data. This is 870 calls in the last 12 months. She's averaging 60 to this month. Last month, she got 100 phone calls that month. And 1 month, she got 35 consultations in a single month. 35. I mean, she is crushing it. She just hired two new staff members. You can call her, Amber. Go give her a call. She's having a good time right now. I'm telling you. And for the first time in years, she sent me a message. It was the cutest thing. She's like, I'm actually thinking about my retirement for the first time in years. You know, she couldn't even think about that because now she can think about selling her firm because she's got these 2 extra staff members and she's starting to systematize it. So it's not fully dependent on her, but now she has the lead flow to make that happen. So anyways, we'll talk more about Vonda later, but regardless, I've got 870 leads here. We do run Google ads for her. And over the last year, I've actually gotten about 9.5% of her over lead volume is actually coming from Google ads, right? So when you combine those things together, we get a total of 82% of leads either directly or indirectly being attributed to Google, all right? Like that is mind bending, all right? And so when I worked at another agency, I discovered this and I was like, wait. Why am I doing Facebook ads? Why am I doing Instagram ads? Why am I on LinkedIn? Why am I on Twitter? Why am I doing any of this? Now, I'm not saying those things can't be profitable or those things aren't worth doing. But what I am saying is if I haven't capped out this source of 82%, like the literal 20% that drives 80%, why would I be on TikTok? Why would I be on LinkedIn? Why would I be doing any of these things? Again, not that those things can't be profitable, but until I've fully gotten these guys out, fully gotten these leads, I don't think it makes sense to be on any other platform, right? Once you cap this out and it is possible to cap it out, great, go do other things on top of that. But this is a huge percentage to not already have fully capped out, not to mention the beautiful thing about Google, and what I want you guys to take about this, is that this Google My Business profile, and when you run Google ads correctly, it only shows up when somebody is looking for a lawyer right now. Okay, or they're looking for a service right now. This doesn't show up on research terms. So if you say like how to get a divorce, this doesn't show up. Like you're not getting somebody at the research level. You're only getting somebody when they've already quite literally raised their hand and told Google, I need a lawyer, or I need help, or I need a financial advisor, or I need a real estate professional. I need this right now. No middle ground. You either need it or you don't. Okay, and you can do that with both Google ads and Google My Business. And so for me, it's the bottom of the funnel. It's the people who say, I need a lawyer right now. So cap those guys out first. Get the people who are raising their hand saying, I need somebody right now. Get all those leads. And when you max out there, sure, then go to TikTok and LinkedIn and try to convince people who aren't sure yet that they maybe need help, or kind of get that referral network and go a little bit broader. But get the guys at the bottom first. Get the low-hanging fruit. And that's what Google My Business is, and Google Ads is, in my opinion, is the low-hanging fruit of people who've already raised their hand and say, I need help now. Not to mention, it's about 82% of your overall lead volume at its cap. And it's true for Vonda. Vonda's data is pretty much exact. About 82% of Vonda's call volume and lead volume comes from Google at this point. So the data is wild. So we are going to move past that. So we talked briefly about this. I'm going to skip over this slide a little bit. I did it first, which is, why does Google work so well for service businesses? One, Google's designed to help local services. Google My Business is incredibly local based. They've actually kicked out big players. There used to be a time where these big players would like create all these fake offices in all these different cities. So if they had like, you know, these multi-million, $100 million companies, they could just create thousands of listings in every city that weren't real. Google actually fought back against that and killed that off because they wanted to make money from all the local service businesses. So quite literally, Google My Business and Google Ads are being really well designed right now for firms like y'all, for local service firms. In addition to that, we talked about this user behavior naturally lends itself to being profitable for local service businesses. So for example, people saying, I need a divorce lawyer near me, you either have a problem or you don't. And Google is designed for problem solving. And so it makes a lot of sense with service businesses. User behavior naturally lends itself to the service business model of you either have a problem or you don't. If you have a problem, find me, call me, right? I already talked about this. And then we kind of briefly mentioned this, which is that Google lets you show up in front of somebody right when they are most interested in your services. It doesn't really do research terms. Like that's traditional old world SEO, which I'll talk about in a minute and why I think is dead. Talking about, long tail keywords, trying to show up when somebody's researching you, all that. It has its time and place. But for what I'm talking about, bottom of funnel, people who need help right now, Google lets you show up right when somebody has a pain and not a moment before. And so you get them right when they have pain, and then they're most likely to convert. So you're getting highly relevant people who have a legal issue or they have a relevant issue to your service. And your job at that point is to do sufficient sales skill to convince them that you are the best person to solve it. But they do have a legitimate issue by the time they call you. So big question here, guys, is of course, are you yet another marketing guru pitching another SEO service that doesn't work? No, I honestly quite despise SEO. I learned a lot. I have a love-hate relationship with SEO. I used to be a big SEO nut, content marketing nut. I have built websites that literally made got millions of visitors on the website, like millions. It was awesome. It was really cool. I felt so cool about myself until I learned the hard way that 1 million visitors on your website does not mean you're making any money. I once had a website that had 1 million visitors a year, and we made $5,000 in like 4 years, right? And so a million visitors, and I learned it's a vanity metric. It doesn't mean nothing, right? And so when I started re-emphasizing, I think, okay, but what actually makes us money? I learned the hard way that traffic and SEO don't necessarily equate to making money. That's not that they can't, but again, on their own, they do not. All right. So for me, what I talk about, especially with lawyers and especially local service-based businesses, is that SEO as you know it is dead. I said this earlier, Amber laughed about it, but SEO as you know it is dead. And here is why. So for me, if you go do a Google search, I'll just pull this up. You go do the same Google search we've been looking at this whole time. All right. First thing you see is you see Google ads. So already the first 30% of your screen is ads. So SEO is way below this, right? Traditional SEO, way below this. So all ads. Then you've got this giant Google My Business. We're now 50% down the screen. All right. How many people scroll past 50% of the screen? Very few. That's not to say that they don't, but a lot of people at this point, they have found their answer. They've either found it here or they found it here. Okay. But here's the real kicker that killed it for me. Was I realized that, hey, even if you did spend all this money and time trying to get up here, you're going to be competing against aggregators like Justia, Legal Match, Thumbtack, Super Lawyers is probably here, FindLaw is probably here, Lawyers.com. Like, you're not going to beat these aggregators. And so when I did this example, I found here's an aggregator. I mean, these are guys spending millions of dollars a year to show up for these search terms. You're never going to beat these guys. And then what really killed it for me was even if you did show up on here, I did the math once. I tracked it. What I discovered is that on average, say you have 1,000 people who visit your website, you put all this effort in, you get those research terms, you show up somehow for how to get a divorce doing X and Y, that shows up, it starts getting visitors on your website. On average, that website traffic only converts at a rate of 1.5%. 1.5. So what that means is for every 1,000 visitors on your website, you're only going to get 15 calls. And again, not to say that can't be profitable, but for a lot of businesses, and a lot of small businesses that aren't in a situation where they can wait 2 to 3 years for that to even happen, much less by the time it happens, they're only talking about 15 calls. You're really it's going to struggle, right? It's really hard to make profitable. And so for me, all of this, when you combine aggregators, the difficulty to rank, and the fact that even if you do rank and you get website traffic, and you're just not going to get that many calls from it, just meant that for me, SEO, traditional SEO as you know it, is dead. And for me, though, especially when I did the data afterwards, I found out, but wait, that doesn't mean we're totally dead in the water here. It just means we need to redirect our attention to other parts of Google. And that's when I found out about Google My Business and Google Ads. And even then, more fortunately, found out the majority of the call volume anyways was coming from Google My Business and Google Ads. Like the other, 18% that we're not talking about, oftentimes maybe 15% of it, that's coming from like Google organic, or it's coming from referral, or some people, direct traffic, people who already found your website on a business card. Like it's a bunch of other stuff, but the volume is from Google My Business anyways. So this whole section, I'm never going to talk about this because for me, this whole section is dead. It just doesn't have the call volume. It doesn't have the profitability. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. We're not talking about that. We're only talking about Google My Business and Google Ads from here on out. So while traditional SEO no longer works for small businesses, service firms who put time, money, and effort into Google My Business and Google Ads are crushing it. Now, bringing it back to Vonda Covington, who I was talking about earlier, she was actually paying a guy specifically for SEO, and he was trying to get her website traffic and all this other stuff, and of course wasn't working. He was only getting 3 or 4 calls a month, or 3 or 4 consultations. I don't even think it was that many, honestly. It was bad, but it wasn't working, right? But in the last 12 months for Vonda, I was telling you that story. She was barely surviving. She was on loans, potentially considering bankruptcy, and couldn't imagine retiring. She barely generated 10 calls per month. She was selling at that point, hiring somebody for SEO services. And then since then, as you saw in that data before, that was live data from her account, generated over 900 new client leads, is averaging around 30 plus consultations per month. And as far as I can tell, I think she's had a couple months now where she signed an extra $50,000 per month. So she's doing pretty good since where we were a year ago. She's one of my favorite stories. I love her. So I already covered it. I don't want to dwell too much on it. But for the first time in years, Vonda is planning her retirement. So that being said, now let's actually talk about it. What do we need to do to dominate Google My Business and Google Ads to generate that $25,000 to $50,000 in new client revenue every single month? So let's start with Google My Business. What are the 2 secrets to ranking highly on Google My Business? It's actually a lot simpler than you might think. It's not a bunch of black magic. It's not the most complex thing in the world. You don't even technically need to hire a guy like me. All right. However, it's a lot of grunt work. All right. And we're going to talk about this. So basically 2 things that go into this: a whole lot of grunt work. And we'll talk about the second one in a minute. But what goes into grunt work? First of all, consider this. What does Google like? Google likes Google. All right, that's it. Google likes Google. It's a silly answer, but it's true. Google likes Google. So how do you get yourself to rank highly on Google? You prove to Google that you love Google as much as they love themselves. All right. So how do you prove that to them? You do everything possible on the platform. Anything you can do on their platform, you're going to want to do it. All right. So that means including, but not limited to, making posts, uploading photos, adding products and services, adding questions and answers, responding to reviews, keeping your profile up to date, right? Like just anything you can do on the platform, you should be doing it. And not because it's good, it's a good social platform. Like if you make a post on there, nobody's going to read it. It's not going to go viral. If you upload a video, it's not TikTok. Nobody's going to watch it. That's not the point. I mean, maybe somebody watches it and that's great, but most people aren't going to watch it, and most people aren't going to read it. And it's a terrible Instagram. Nobody's going to like your photo. Nobody's going to share your photo. There's no virality factor on the platform. However, Google likes it, and we're trying to make Google happy. I don't care if anybody else reads it. I just want Google to read it. And when Google reads it, they're like, oh yeah, this guy's putting effort in, and they get to read it. And if you do like posts on your service area, they're like, oh, this person's an expert at everything they're posting about. Oh, they upload videos and their images and they're active. Oh, this person deserves to rank highly. And so when you put this grunt work in, you don't do it because you want social virality as if it was Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. You do it because Google likes it and it makes Google happy. And when you make Google happy, Google ranks you highly. All right. So when we go look at Vonda, I actually can show you that example. Let's pull up Vonda Covington out in Richmond. Pull her up. Let's see if I can move to the side here. So first of all, we got a couple. I got less reviews on hers than I'd like, but she's still gotten a lot since we started working with her. But we're responding to every review that comes in. We're uploading new photos every single week, right? Videos, if she has it. We're uploading something every single week. We have products here. You can see here, we've divided every single thing that she does: divorce, family law, LGBTQ, child support and custody. We divided all of these products. Each of these products, they have additional context on it, clearly written out, putting, again, more detail, more words, and more keywords, proving to Google that we're experts at every single thing that we do. All that's there. Over the last year, I've literally written a book on every question and answer I could think of. We have 120 questions and answers over the last year written out. These are written by JD holders, so we write them for her. Usually women who retired after having children, but decided to still use the degree. And now they write for us. And so we've just got question after question, all of these being like 300 words long. So over the last year, we've added 120 questions. We've added like 36,000 words to this profile in the last 12 months, right? Answering everything under the sun. And so we've proven to Google, we're an expert in this topic, and we've got all the context to prove it, which is why Vonda is doing so well. And just doing everything you can on the platform. Of course, same thing here, posts, right? So we post every single week without fail. Just again, proving to Google that we're going to do everything that we can to prove to Google that we love them as much as they love themselves. So grunt work is #1 secret there. It's not hard. It's simple, but it takes a lot of work. Okay, so I'm not going to hide that. So this is absolutely, if you're in a situation where you have to DIY everything, fine. Just do the work yourself. I've got a podcast I can link to later with Susan Guthrie, which some of you may know, top 1.5% podcaster and lawyer. But I did a podcast with Susan Guthrie covering the exact details of how to do this yourself if you want to. Usually people want to pay me to do it because it's a lot of grunt work, but you're more than welcome to do it. It's not, again, it's not black magic. It's tangible stuff. Just put the work in and you're going to make Google happy. All right, now that's half the equation. The other half here, before we get there, I'm going to show you some bad examples. So this is an example. You can see they've got no products, no services, no filled out this is what most people do. They usually set and forget. They maybe have a couple bad reviews. They don't have much. Here's another example. Nothing. They got one photo, but it doesn't, nothing else. No questions and answers, no products, no posts, no services, nothing, right? None of these profiles have a chance to rank because they're just not putting any effort into the profile. Some examples of what it might look like. I showed you Vonda already. Posts, photos, products, questions and answers, and responding to reviews, all the stuff I actually just showed you. So the second half here, though, is reviews. Now, you guys, some of you guys are going to groan about this because I know reviews are hard, right? Nobody likes reviews. But what you don't know yet is that reviews are 35% of the ranking algorithm, all right? That is a huge lever you can pull for immediate benefit. If I put that math another way, if I've already told you 72% of your leads came from Google My Business and 35% of your Google My Business ranking is reviews, you can make an argument that 25% of all your leads can be directly attributed specifically to your reviews or lack thereof on Google My Business. All right, so reviews pay. They are a massive factor. Now, a couple tips on this, guys. First of all, there's two components to reviews. All right, it's review count, which is obvious, which is how many reviews you have. But there's also review velocity, which is how frequently you get new reviews. So if you're in a market where somebody has 300 reviews and you have 20, like don't despair. You don't have to get 300 reviews to be competitive. One of the ways you might be able to compete is that you can try to get more reviews more frequently than they do. Because nowadays they probably only get maybe a couple reviews a month. But if you can get 5 reviews a month, you can outcompete them and you can still start ranking. So you don't have to despair if somebody has so many reviews than you because they've been working on it for 5 years longer than you have, right? Like you can still compete even if you can't get the review count. But more importantly, review generation is actually much easier than most people think it is. Okay, and what I mean by that is that you can generate reviews. And if you take nothing else from this, guys, take this. You can generate reviews from more than just paying clients. You can ask anyone you have provided legitimate value to for a review, which includes consultations, seminars, webinars, friends and family you've given free legal advice to, anyone you've given some sort of advice to that's relevant to the service you provide, some sort of value to them, you can ask for a review. All right, so I've got a lot of people right now, every time they do a consultation, we immediately ask 5 minutes afterward for a review. And we get reviews from people who don't even become clients just because they had a good consultation experience. And they're getting 3, 4, 5 reviews a month on autopilot. I have estate planning lawyers. They host a webinar every month and we get 5 reviews a month just from asking people who attend the webinar, even if they don't become a client, but they just watched a 60-minute webinar. They got value. Or they did a seminar at a nursing home. You can ask those guys. You can ask, of course, paying clients. But if you do anything like this, or you do a CLE, or you train, you can ask anybody you've trained for a review. You can ask anyone you've given some sort of legitimate value to as it relates to your service, free or not, paid or not. You can ask for a review. And so when you broaden your horizon a little bit, generating reviews gets a lot easier. You don't just have to ask paying happy clients who cases recently closed. You have a much broader network than that. Anyone you gave legitimate value to, you can ask for a review. And again, it pays to get reviews. And if you're willing to and you're able to, you can also automate a lot of this. So like what I was talking about earlier, we automate after a free consultation or after a paid consultation, 5 minutes later, asking for a review. That can be great. You can automate, right after you close a case, you can immediately ask for a review. If you're running automated webinars to Facebook ads, things like that, again, immediately asking for a review. Email list automatically asking for a review. There's lots of ways that you can automate this process. But if you can get in the habit of asking every single person every time that you provided legitimate value to, you will crush it and it will make a huge difference. It is a massive, massive lever. One of the things we actually did once, I had a guy who has 20 years of Outlook contacts. And I said, look, dude, just export all of your Outlook contacts. And he gave me 2,500 Outlook contacts. And I've just been emailing them now. I just slowly have been emailing and asking these people to leave a review. And we've gotten like 15 extra reviews from just exporting his Outlook contacts and slowly starting to ask them all. Okay, so there's a lot of creative ways you can ask. You can get a bigger network of people to ask for reviews. You just got to be willing to put the names down, figure it out, and actually ask them. Now, we automate all of that for our clients. So all they have to do is give us a name, a phone number, an email, and then we do all the automatic follow-up. But regardless, the point is, ask everyone for reviews. It is a massive factor to ranking on Google My Business. This is math I was talking about. Basically, 25% of your calls will come from effectively reviews. This is an example of somebody I've worked with. You may or may not know Anthony Diaz. He is, I think he's part of this association, but if not, he is a media. He is, yeah. You guys know Anthony Diaz. Like, I'm pretty sure Anthony's part of this.
Yeah.
So I work with him right now. He went from 3 reviews to 35 5-star reviews in 3 months. Most of it almost entirely automated. Had a 3.7 rating at the time with only 3 reviews. We automated everything. We automatically follow up after all his consultations. Now he's gotten up to, if I look at these, he's got a total of 37 reviews now. I think he's actually got more than that now across his profile. So generating reviews is absolutely possible if you put the systems in place and you're willing to ask a broader network. So if you combine these things together with review generation, grunt work with review generation, what do you get? Generally, you can generate about 30 to 50 new client calls every single month, people who are actively looking for your services. Usually between months 6 through 9, you can usually get up to about 50 to 75 new client leads every single month. And depending on your market size and how aggressive your overarching marketing and branding is, I've actually seen people reach up to 350 new client calls a month purely from their Google My Business profile. Now, that usually takes a bigger brand and other efforts. Like, it's not just Google My Business on its own. It's part of an overarching thing, but it is possible to get up to that level. So we talked about. So speaking of that, it's a good time to transition here to Google Ads. So Google My Business is great, but what about Google Ads, guys? You've surely had a bunch of horror stories and wasting money. So I've only got a couple of tips on this that makes a big difference, which is I need you guys to understand one thing that makes a big difference. Google Ads is designed to spend your money, not make you money. All right. Never forget this. Google Ads, as it is on its own, without any help, is designed to spend your money, not make you money. All right. But if you know that ahead of time, you can use that to your advantage. So here's how you actually fix that. In theory, Google Ads is great. You can spend money to show up in front of somebody right when they're most interested in your service and actively Googling for solutions. But in practice, as you've likely experienced, Google Ads sets you up with a bunch of automatic tools, or you're maybe using a cheap provider. And what you end up finding is you're probably going to waste your money. You get a bunch of calls that are irrelevant, or you get clicks that are irrelevant, or get lead forms of people who are in a totally different practice area, right? It doesn't matter. Okay. Like, that's probably the most common experience I see. But this basically happens for 2 reasons. One, left to their own devices, Google will spend your money on any term they deem relevant. So for example, if you say divorce lawyer, they're going to bid on cheap divorce lawyer, affordable divorce lawyer, how to not pay my divorce lawyer, how to get out of my divorce lawyer contract. It has the word divorce lawyer in it. That's what you wanted, right? You want anything with the word divorce lawyer. And so Google on their own, they don't give a heck. They're just going to do anything with the word divorce lawyer in it, and they don't care at all if it's relevant to you. All right. So left on their own devices, you can't trust Google. Secondly, Google doesn't understand your business, nor what sort of leads actually make you the most amount of money. All right. So for example, in criminal law, they don't know that there is a difference between a guy who's had his 5th DUI and a nurse who just got her 1st DUI and is risking losing her license. Right. And that's just a very simple, obvious example. But the point is, Google has no idea what actually makes you money. And so those 2 things, you've got to learn to work around them. So if you understand those limitations ahead of time, you can actually flip the tables and reliably use Google Ads to put money in and print money out. And here's how. So here's the trick, guys, to printing money and new clients with Google Ads. 1, you have to be willing to go to war with the platform and stop wasting money on clicks that aren't sufficiently profitable. So when I run Google Ads, and if you're not willing to do this work yourself, either hire somebody or don't run Google Ads. I go in there every day or every week, and I literally tell Google, stop paying for this click, stop paying for that click. I have 3,000 words. I tell Google, never pay for this click. If it has the word cheap, pro bono, low cost, affordable, all these different things, I don't want to pay for it. If I'm running a estate planning campaign, there is no reason in heck I should be bidding on zip codes in the inner city who don't have likely at least $200,000 to $300,000 in assets. I can be targeting zip codes of people who have houses, who own houses that I know they have at least $200,000, $300,000 in assets based on their physical proximity. So you got to be willing to go to the war and stop paying for clicks that aren't sufficiently profitable. Step 2, as I kind of mentioned this with the DUI example, is you need to be able to utilize contextual intelligence about your business to target leads who are far more likely to convert into paying clients. Basically, stop paying and praying. And so what does that mean? The example I just gave there, I just gave a couple good ones, which is, hey, contextual intelligence. If I'm an estate planning lawyer, what makes me the most money, like wills and trusts, those are nice bread and butter. But what makes me the big money is probates and estate administration. But estate administration only makes me money if they have assets. All right. Well, if you're in inner city, chances are your assets probably aren't that high. Maybe in New York, that's different. But in a lot of inner cities and a lot of different cities, you're not really looking at that much income. But if you're in the suburbs where I know you own a $500,000 or $1 million house, chances are you've got assets. right? And so you can use that contextual knowledge in Google Ads to better target that audience. All right. And so when you combine these two things together, you combine aggressive click removal. You're trying to remove as many clicks as possible. I'm not trying to get clicks. I'm trying to remove clicks. Google already tries to get clicks. I don't need to help Google get clicks. It wants to do that already. My job is to remove clicks. Okay. And I combine that with contextual intelligence. You can beat Google. All right. And what I usually see is, first of all, somebody has to put the effort in. If you're not willing to do that, so don't do Google Ads. Somebody either you need to pay somebody who's willing to do it or do it yourself. But if you're not willing to go to war, I wouldn't be on Google Ads. Secondly, once you do all that work, what I found is that you can typically generate new clients at a pretty profitable rate of about $250 to $750 per client. All right. Now that depends on your practice area and your market. I've seen it up to $1,000 if you're saying personal injury, right? Like again, it really depends on what you're targeting. But in general, you can pretty profitably generate a client somewhere between $250 and $750. And additionally, as mentioned earlier, when you invest in Google Ads, it actually has kind of a positive feedback loop, and it helps your Google My Business profile do better. Now, Google will never say this, but there happens to be a correlation between when you spend money on Google Ads and how well your Google My Business performs. I wonder why. Is there a connection between those two things? I have no idea. Now, I say that tongue in cheek. There are some legitimate reasons. One of the legitimate reasons is inevitably when you run Google Ads, a certain percentage, say 20% of the people who land on your landing page, they're going to go back to Google. They're going to search your brand name, which makes your brand look bigger because they want to go read your reviews, right? And so there's this positive feedback loop of pay for a Google ad, pay for a click, look at your landing page, go back to Google your name, look at your profile. So that's kind of the legitimate reason other than the tongue-in-cheek one. But regardless, the point is they have a positive feedback loop. When you run them together, they both perform better. Your Google My Business can hit new highs. Your Google Ads can hit new highs when they run together. So I often say do both if you can. Now that you actually know, we're getting to the end here, guys. We're getting to the final phase. I know we're a little bit running short on time here. How do you actually convert new client calls into the $25,000 to $50,000 per month I promised? At this point, getting to 50 to 100 new client calls per month, we can definitely do that with Google My Business, Google Ads, all the stuff I showed you. So if you're not already getting that much call volume, you can definitely do it with this. It's not a problem. It's very reliable. And if you do the work, you get the reviews, you run the ads, you can get the call volume, right? No problem there. The hard part comes in is what happens next. You get those client calls, but how do you turn calls into money? Because I talked about this earlier. I'm not big on vanity metrics. Like, I love generating calls, but my real job, if anybody who works with me, my job is not to get you calls. My job is to make you money. My job is to make you profit, right? So I've got to be involved. I got to be aware of what do we need to do to get there. All right. So basically, long story short, and I kind of hinted at this before, you must become excellent at sales and intake. All right. A lot of people are not very good at this. They let their calls go to voicemail. They're not following up. They have no sales training. They went to law school, or they went to certification. They didn't take time to learn how to become great at sales, or they don't take that much time on intake, or they don't train their staff, or they don't answer the call. There's so many reasons, right? But every single time you drop the ball even a little bit, you're looking at a massive drop in your conversion rate. So for example, if somebody calls you and you don't answer, every 4 hours that goes by, your conversion rate can drop by as much as 50% for just 4 hours. 50%. You're losing 50% of your money for every 4 hours you wait. And that's easy. You're just asleep, or you're busy over here and you don't have a system in place. So the point is, you must become excellent at sales and intake. And the number one factor, as in my opinion, your profitability is not call volume. Like, I just taught you how to generate call volume, and I teach that first because everyone cares about that. Everyone's like, that's the thing I need. That's my problem. Sure. Go solve it. Go fix it. But ultimately, when it comes to breaking past 500,000 and getting to the million level or going beyond the million level, the number one thing that determines your profitability is not call volume. It's actually how successful you are at converting calls into clients. I have met people who are making $250,000 on 50 calls a month, and I've met people who are making $1 million a year on 50 calls a month. Same lead source, same lead quality, same everything. They're just way better at actually answering their phone, scheduling the consultation, doing an excellent job with the consultation, and they close at a higher rate. All right. And so we're going to talk about how to actually do that and what metrics matter. So this is what I was talking about. I've met guys on both sides of the spectrum with the same call volume. So how do you measure your sales strength and actually understand what you need to improve? You need to understand the 3 big key performance indicators that determine profitability for any marketing campaign. It doesn't matter if you're doing Google, TikTok, or anything. These things are going to determine whether or not your marketing campaign is profitable. Number 1, your average client value should be at least $3,000, ideally $5,000. Now, that's a weird KPI, and I bet you didn't expect that. But here's the thing about service businesses, especially if you are not already over $1 million or a couple million and you don't have economies of scale. Life gets real hard and real miserable if you're not making at least $3,000 to $5,000 on a client. I had a client once who only made $2,000 on average per client that they took on. All right. We did the math once. If she wanted to make $500,000 a year, she had to sign 290 clients in a year. 290, not to mention service 290 clients. You ain't got the time. Ain't nobody got that kind of time. It ain't going to happen. So the economies of scale work against you, especially as smaller firms, if you're only making $2,000. But if you're making $3,000, $5,000, well, suddenly now you're only talking about 100, maybe 150 clients. And that's a doable number for a firm your size. That gives you some breathing room to start hiring some staff. Right. So if you're not at least making this much money, you're going to struggle on any of this. Call volume is not your biggest problem. You need to raise prices. I highly recommend it. If you're in a different stage in your business and you've got the economy scale such that you've got it systemized and automized and you can pump out clients for $1,500 and it costs you $100 to do, great, ignore this advice. But if you're a normal solo firm like me, or like I was, or like when I started, and or like a lot of lawyers I meet who they got a couple support staff, or they've got maybe one other person help. If you're a normal kind of small business, if you're not making $3,000 to $5,000 per client, everything you do is going to be harder. Everything gets worse, right? You've got to convert more people for less money, and then you have to service more people for less money, and everything falls apart. All right. So as much as I can recommend it, guys, if you're not making $3,000, ideally $5,000, you've got to raise prices. KPI number 2, your intake team must convert at least 35% of calls into consultations. All right. So this is one of my favorite metrics, call to consultation rate, which means if 10 people call you, you want to be scheduling at least 3 to 4 consultations. Now you can do less than this and you'll be fine. You can do more than this. Of course, you're going to be fine. But this is the percentage that I've seen that if you hit it, you're going to be pretty darn happy. All right. So 35% is the number you're striving for. Try to get, if you have 10 calls, get 3 to 4 consultations. And then KPI number 3, and again, you got to be tracking this, guys, is your sales team needs to be able to convert at least 35% of consultations into clients. So if you meet with 10 people, you need to be able to reliably make 3 to 4 new clients out of that. Again, you can do it with lower, and you can always, of course, always do it with more. But these are the numbers I found that, as a rule of thumb, people are really happy at. Their business scales real nice. Their team functions real happily, right? Like things just seem to work in a way that they don't otherwise work if these are lower than that, right? So I highly recommend striving for a 35% call to consultation rate and a 35% consultation to client rate. And so when you run the math, say you generate 75 new client calls in a month. If your intake team successfully converted 35% of those calls into consultations, you'd expect about 26 consultations in that month. If your sales team then converted 35% of consultations into paying clients, you can then expect to sign up at least 9 new clients. And if your average client value is about that $5,000 I was talking about, you would have made $45,000 that month, which puts us right in that kind of metric that we're gunning for. All right. And you can always do this math backwards. So if you know these numbers and you're trying to figure out, hey, what goal do you want to hit? You can run these numbers backward and you can figure out exactly how many calls you need to take or generate, or how many consultations you need to have, or whatever. Like, you can run these numbers. And that's why these numbers are great, is they can actually help you understand what do you need to do to reach your goals and what do you need to improve. Because if you're not converting 35% of calls to consultations, you need to solve your intake. If you're not converting 35% of consultations into clients, you need to solve your sales skills, which I have training on that. I don't have time to cover that, but if you scan this QR code over here, I do have sales training on that and how to make that better. And then, by the way, I recommend these guys as your bare minimum striving. I have seen people close at an 85% rate. I've seen people schedule 60% of calls into consultations, same lead quality, same everything. It is possible. It is doable. And more than anything, I recommend, I know it's tempting to blame lead quality. It's tempting to blame anything else. But unless you're a sales expert and you've devoted a lot of training time to becoming a sales expert, I recommend bending the rod in the other way and trying to just assume that the problem is you and try to look for anything you can do to fix it. And eventually, once you've bent the rod the other way, you'll eventually become an expert and you can start saying, okay, the issue is really this or really that. But I promise you, if you take the time and assume that you are the problem, or assume that your intake is the problem, or assume that there's something you could be doing better, that if you implement that, then you will have far better results. And if you keep just kind of hoping that lead quality is going to change, or the quality of person is going to change, or whatever have you, you'll get way better results assuming that you are the problem and that you could fix it. And so basically, if you understand this, then you guys can improve. Basically, Yeah, forgive me. If your firm is underperforming on any of these three KPIs, you must improve these for any marketing campaign to work. If these KPIs aren't being met, doesn't matter what campaign you're running, TikTok, LinkedIn, Google Ads, Google My Business, doesn't matter. They're all going to struggle. You have to solve this first. And we'll kind of end up in here. I don't want to do too much of a pitch, but basically, guys, no matter what's stopping your firm's growth, Noble Marketing is ready to help your firm reach the next level. We have products for both the firm trying to get to $500,000 as well as trying to get to, say, $3 million or plus. We are known for our guarantees. For startups who want help reaching their first $500,000 a year, we actually guarantee their campaign will be profitable in 3 months or less, or it's free. For firms that are over $500,000 and trying to reach up to $3 million, we actually guarantee that we'll double your revenue in 12 months or less, or I'll literally work for free until I achieve that outcome. And then anybody above 3 million, we do custom plans. So we say, hey, you want this much money? Here's what the timeline is. Here's what it takes. And we guarantee we'll reach it in that time frame that we promise. But either way, we'll work with you to drastically increase your new client call volume, 2, increase your average client value, 3, improve your intake systems, and 4, supercharge your sales closing rate. I do have training on all this. Check out the QR code if you haven't already. You can scan it on your phone. But I have training programs on how to improve your sales process, have training programs on how to improve your intake. All of these things are doable. It just takes time and effort. If you can reach these percentages, your business will hit the goals that you want to hit. So that covers my presentation. If you guys want to talk to me, feel free to go to the website or scan the QR code. Otherwise, I'll leave it to Nicole as I've to tell us what next steps are. Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Just, yeah, if you want to leave that up so people can write that down.
Yep.
And it was amazing, so chock full of incredible information. I think that we will open it up for some Q&A. We have about 7 minutes left. I'm sure people are going to have questions. So you can either unmute yourself and say, or raise your hand. I'll get off with a question that I have, and maybe I missed this, but if someone does everything that they need to do for the, to come up high on Google, I was thinking to myself, well, what if 50 people do everything that you say, but only 5 can show up on Google? How does that work?
Yeah, so Google My Business, fortunately, is not like traditional SEO. It is constantly switching. So nobody owns that spot 100% of the time. All right. In this world, it's called local market share. So in a market like Houston, for example, most people, they only have like 0.05% of the market, and they're generating like 50 calls a month. Right. So if you generate even 1% of the market in Houston, you are crushing it, right? Like you are getting some massive call volume. You are thrilled with your life. All right. And the reason that works is, again, you never own it 100% of the time. When I say 1%, I'm saying you only show up in the top 3 1% of the time. Okay. But because markets, the way these markets work and the way there's so much search volume and there's so much, they're switching it out so frequently, you can still make a lot of money, even if you're only showing up at 1% of the time. Now, in smaller markets, I have some people out in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, you can own up to 20 or 30% of that search volume. And so you're showing up 20 to 30% of the time. But even in that small market, you're not showing up 100% of the time. So in really small markets, yes, there is a certain level where eventually you're going to hit the cap of how many people can be doing great. But in most markets where I see most people are serving, those bigger markets, Houston, Dallas, I'm just naming Texas ones at the top, Philadelphia, New York, Georgia, any of these bigger cities, you're never going to hit that problem. There's not going to be that, very unlikely to be that many people competing at that high caliber level. Otherwise, other ranking factors, again, I kind of hinted at this, but we've talked about the direct stuff, grunt work, reviews, Google ads, all that kind of stuff, but there's bigger stuff that come into play. Part of your ranking on Google My Business is also your overall brand presence. All right. So are you running TV ads? Are you running TikTok ads, Facebook ads? Are you running radio ads? How often are people searching for your name? Are you doing a local community thing? Are you sponsoring people? What is Google actually knows how big is your perceived brand based on how much people interact with your brand throughout the internet, both on social media as well as in Google searches. And that becomes part of the overall ranking factor. So if you were in that situation where you had, say, 3 people who own 30% of a market, then how would you beat those guys? Well, you got to become a better brand, a bigger brand, sponsor local people, run local TV, it's just a different campaign. That's what I was talking about at the beginning, that this doesn't really matter. This question is theoretical until you're making like $4 million a year. But when you're at $4 million a year and I'm saying, how do you use this to get to like 10 million? It's a little bit different of a game. We're going to do all this stuff that we talked about, and we really got to start talking about omnipresent brand presence to build up Google's perceived sense of how big is your brand.
Fascinating. So interesting. Different world. Anybody else have questions? It can be specific to your own situation. We've got 4 minutes, so take advantage of Ronnie being here. Anybody? No? Well, that just means, Ronnie, you did an incredible job.
I don't, did I do terrible or did I do good? I don't
Oh,
know.
it means you did good.
Can we get some feedback? What do you guys think? Did you find it
I-
useful? Did you not
I-
find it useful?
I have a question.
Go for it.
I see that you're using the QR codes and you're starting to see them a lot more.
Yeah.
Is that something to weave into the Google My Business? I mean, as far as,
That's cool.
So the
Okay.
number one place I use QR codes for lawyers and for anybody I work with is basically if you have people come to your physical office, one of the coolest things you can do is you can have a little review sheet that says, hey, please leave me a 5-star review. And you can put this QR code on that printout. So after you talk to them, you just hand that piece of paper and say, hey, you can scan this with your phone. Please leave me a review. Right. So I use it in very tactful moments where it's useful. So in these presentations, there's so much content I don't have time to cover. So for me, I'm like, hey, go check out this QR code. Go. Yeah, and you use it for that for very tactful moments. But other than that, like I wouldn't say don't overuse them. Try to use them for like really key things. And so for you, if you're, a local service business, reviews is where it's at. So I would use it for review generation, have it linked to wherever they can go leave a review on Google instantly. And for me, it's about, hey, go look up this other content, schedule a consultation with me, whatever have you.
thank you.
Yeah.
I
Any
have a
other-
question. I
Yeah,
have a
go for it.
question. What's the best way to tell them to leave a review? Like I was doing this a little while ago and it was like, okay, go find my address, go on maps and find my address and then click this and like,
Yeah.
what's the best?
You can make
route?
this way, way easier for yourself. If you log into Google My Business and you pull up your profile here, in your settings, there should be an option. You click ask for reviews. It gives you a link. You just give them a 1-button link. And then all they got to do, you just give them that link and this will go immediately to leave a review on that profile, just like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So they have to be signed into Google for it. I just did incognito, so I won't be signed in. But you just give them that one link and it immediately takes them to leave a review.
Okay.
That makes it much easier. Awesome.
It's funny because I woke up this morning to a ad on my Facebook feed from somebody selling these services. And the first thing it says is Google My Business is now called Google Business Profile.
That is true. I still call it Google My Business because most people recognize it as that, but it is technically called Google Business Profile now.
Right. Okay.
Was it a guy named Sean? I see the guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, Sean
yeah.
advertises all the time. Ugh, I know him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has a whole course on it. You can do it yourself if you want to get everything I've talked about with Google My Business, guys. I'm not going to hide it from you. You can do it yourself. It's just a lot of work.
Well, when you have a full-time job, it's hard to make this.
Can you tell us how much you charge or do we have to call you separately?
Oh, so I can give you the exact rate. So if we're doing Google My Business only, and to be clear, this may not be, I see you're a realtor. I unfortunately wouldn't work with you. I only work with lawyers. So all the information I'm talking about is applicable to you, but I don't want to sell a service to somebody I'm not an expert in. I don't know realtor like I know legal. But for anyone who is a lawyer, Google My Business only campaigns start at $14.97 a month. And when we do it with Google Ads and Google My Business, which I recommend, it starts at $24.97 a month, plus $2,000 a month in Google Ads. However, that's a campaign that's guaranteed to be profitable in 3 months or less. So basically, I say, hey, look, put $4,500 a month on the line, about $500,000 in the first 3 months. But I guarantee you'll make your money back in 3 months or less. If I don't, I work for free for up to 3 months after that. And if I fail after 6 months, which I've never done, I refund all of the money you spent on me and all the money you spent on Google Ads. So I would refund all $13,500 in that event, which I've fortunately never had to do. I'm very sincere about nobody ever losing money on us.
Amazing. But you did say, Ellen, he does only work with attorneys, but you have some people that you could recommend to anybody that is looking for these services. Do you want to offer that or do you want them to reach out to you for that?
I apologize. I was coughing when you said that. What was that?
You had mentioned before the call started that if anybody was interested in these
Oh, yes.
services, they're not
If you guys want to
attorneys.
reach out to me, I can refer you. Anybody who's not a lawyer, I'm happy to refer you out to somebody else who can help and maybe does have more expertise in that market. I'm very sincere about being specialist at what I do and guaranteeing results. And I can't guarantee realtor results because I don't know it that well. But anybody legal, I've worked with it, touched it, 250 campaigns, very happy to work with.
Do you know that Sean Joshi guy?
I do. I know of him. His material is good. If you just want training material, he's got some pretty good training material. I don't think he offers it as a service, as far as I know. But he might now. But his training material is good. So if you're interested in training material, he's a pretty good place to start.
Well, thank you. That took us to 1 o'clock. I know that people end up having questions after we get off. So if you want to reach out to Ronnie, it sounds like he'd be happy to answer your questions or refer you to someone else. But this was really incredible information. And I just don't know anybody that would want to do this themselves. It's a lot to take on, but it's nice for you to say that we can.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you again, Ronnie. And
absolutely. I
thank
just
you to
posted
our-
my email in chat for anybody who wants to reach out, ask questions, anything
Oh.
follow up. I'm happy to answer questions, guys, talk about it, even if I'm not the guy to help you. I love talking about this stuff. A lot of people don't realize that, like, it's just, they don't realize the call volume's coming from it. And so I want to help people understand that, hey, this is a ridiculous amount of call volume that you're not tapping into. So please reach out. Happy to talk about it.
Amazing. All right. Hope you all take this advice and go and get your businesses up high on Google. All right. Thank you, Ronnie. And thank you,
you.
everybody, for being here. See you soon.